What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, welcome to the channel. My name's Jesse. This is Cadillac Rod and Customs. Sorry for the audio on this deal. I had a nice microphone, and today when I clipped the connector into the phone, I dropped my phone in my pocket, and apparently I malfunctioned the Bluetooth section of it, so it's shit. Anyway, I've been waiting for some parts for the buggy for about a week, maybe a week and a half, so I can finish the brakes, because I have the calipers and the pads and everything for the rear just sitting in a box. The guy that built the buggy originally did all the work of doing a disc brake swap and then took the caliper brackets back off before he got rid of it, so I had to order some, and they showed up today. Hopefully they're the right ones, because I found out recently when I made the order that there's different 14 bolts. And I know that, you know, one's a single rear wheel, one's a dual rear wheel, but I didn't know there was more differences than that. So hopefully these are the right brackets. Packaging kind of sucks. They're from Barnes 4-wheel drive. And like I said, the packaging on these things wasn't great, but who gives a shit, because they're 3/8 plate. It's not like they're gonna scratch or bend, you know. They're already raw metal and they're already bent. So now what I have to do, I know I should probably test fit these first, but I'm not that intelligent. So what I'm going to do is just clean up all the mill scale and all the shipping oil and all that shit. Prime them, shoot them if I can, because it's kind of windy outside today. Sometimes these are kind of a pain, because if people have had this apart before, they'll put silicone all over the backside of this, but there is a seal. If the seal is still there, you shouldn't need silicone for obvious reasons. So slide your shaft, just set it aside, make sure it doesn't tip over or get dirt or anything on the splines. Now, in here is the fun part, because that little ear and oh, that's the only one. Okay. That little ear right there needs to be pounded flat, like that one and that one. And then we'll just spin this lock ring right here out. Behind that is the washer that these rings are attached to, that these tabs are. Then there's another one of these, and then you can just pull the whole thing off. So I'm gonna go get some tools and I'll get this off. Just a regular flathead screwdriver, right? This one might be too big. Like that. Sometimes these are really tight, so you're gonna have to take your screwdriver like this and just start walking it out, and then it's free, like that. So take this, all the way out. These things can be kind of a pain, but don't drop it, because, you know, then it gets dirty and then it's caca. A little lock ring here. See how it has that little tab, locks into your spindle here. And there's your second one. You're gonna have to do the same thing on your second one. Take your hammer and break it loose. Second one shouldn't be as difficult to remove, other than it's, you know, so much farther in there. They make sockets for this, but I'm not going to go buy one just because I don't plan on having to tear this thing apart all the damn time. So I can't justify spending the money on one. Anyway, there's your second. It's exactly the same as the outside. So it doesn't matter which one of these goes in first, is what I'm saying. Some of these, I think it's the 60s and some 14s, have that lock ring, that's actually attached. So these come off as one piece, but a 14 bolt does not. Once you have your lock rings off, you just, okay, yeah, don't do that. Don't drop your washer in the damn dirt. Of course, if you're smarter than me, you don't do this shit in the dirt anyway. But I don't have an option. My cement driveway currently has other projects sitting in it. But here we go. Just walk it off. Now this is the same process whether you have a drum back here or not. There is a bearing right here that I'm trying to get to come off. It's not going to come off. Anyway, so even if this is a drum instead of a disc, if this is still a drum brakes, it's the same process. So you take your drum all the way off, like so. Don't drop it on the end of your spindle because there's a seal in here, and if you drop it on the end of your spindle, there's a chance you might mess up your seal, and you don't want to do that. But now that we have that off, this is the part on drum brakes where they have this big backing plate right here, and it has like your brake shoes and all that shit attached to it. But because this had already been converted to a disc brake before, I don't have any of that stuff. But you take the 4 bolts that hold your backing plate in. So you take all 4 of the bolts that hold your backing plate in place, because they're going to come in through the front, obviously. Don't lose them. Don't throw them away, because you're going to need to reuse them for this kit. Okay? They're going to look like that. Hopefully they're not as rusty and shitty as mine, but this is what they're going to look like. You'll notice when you get these brackets, they have this bend in them. This bend has to point towards the outside of the vehicle. So make sure it goes on that way. And they just go on like that. Always start all 4 bolts before you tighten any of them, because they will go on there crooked. They'll start walking away, and once you get them started on that crooked, it's really hard to bring them back. Now, on the back side of these 14 bolts, when you take your backing plate off, there's this lip. Here, I'll show you. Inside here and here, it's like a raised lip. And if you aren't careful, it won't press on there correctly. So you have to make sure that you tighten your bolts down evenly so it walks up on that step right there, right? There, we're getting a little off. So see how it jumped right there? It's seated dead on there. Now I'll just tighten up all the bolts. I'm sure. Damn it. I forgot something. I'll be right back. Pay attention to what you're doing. I got all 4 bolts in and almost tightened all the way down. and forgot, focus, you bastard, there we go, forgot my thread locker. You don't need much, just a little bit of blue. All right, that's a bit much. Just to make sure that they don't back themselves out, because you don't want that. So now I'm going to go through and put Loctite on all 4 of these bolts, get them tightened all the way down, and then I'll come back when it's time to put the calipers on. All 4 bolts are in and Loctited, tightened. I'm sure there's a torque spec on these, but if you've watched any of my videos in the past, you know that torque specs are just a recommendation, and I just tighten them with my heart, you know, and I've been pretty lucky so far. So all these are on. Now I have to address this because there's some surface rust on this here brake rotor, and I know the proper thing to do is have them cut down and resurfaced on a lathe, but I don't have one of those. That's what I got. That's what I'm going to use. I'm not really worried about it because this is not going to be a race car. It's going to do low speed stuff, and I did the exact same thing on my Cherokee, and they're fine. Those rotors came out of a junkyard. They sat there for a couple of years, had the same amount of rust on them. I hit them with a flap disc on a grinder, and that was almost 2 years ago, and they're still just fine. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'll put this on, then it's time to put the caliper on. Also, I forgot to tell you guys, if you're doing this from drums, when you knock your drum off, you have to flip it over. Sorry, not flip it over. You have to punch all of your studs out, and this piece itself, let's say, this piece here will come off the drum. Okay, I absolutely hate picking up other people's projects but my rear pad doesn't fit, and the rotors don't fit the damn brackets I just bought. So I don't know if these are wrong or if these are wrong. I hate it here. Now I get to pull all this shit back apart yet again, pull the brackets off, and figure out why the hell they don't fit. So stick around. Okay, so after beating my head against the wall for a couple hours on those brakes and realizing I have the wrong stuff, went down today and hopefully got the right stuff. What I did get was the rotors that they recommend with these brackets, and something else. I'm getting there. Hold on. These are supposed to be the right rotors for those brackets, which, if they are, my rear brakes will be complete. And I got this. Granted, I only need the intake, the carburetor off of this motor, but it's complete. Trans, points ignition, everything's here, and it's a running motor. I don't know how long it's been sitting, but it is a running motor. So now I have to dig out my engine hoist and get it out of the back of my truck so I can tear the top end off of it, well, the intake off of it, and get it unloaded. Alright guys, we're now on day 3 of what's supposed to be just a few hours of a job, but it's been wrong part after wrong part after wrong part. So I think I have all the stuff. I know one side's done. I'm not sure about the calipers, but I made them work for now. Now I have to change the rotor, which means knocking out all the studs, pulling out the wheel mount, and changing the actual rotor. And I'll unbox the new one, and I'll give you kind of a side-by-side comparison. Okay, so Barnes when I bought the brackets, recommended a 75 to like 83, 84, 3/4 ton front rotor because it's 12.5 inches. The one that was on there was just over 13. That explains why I couldn't get the slide pins in and why I had all kinds of troubles. That's one of the issues. Now, here is the second issue I have. You see the length of this top hat right here compared to that one? I know this is kind of hard to see, but this one was like 3 1/4. That one's 2 1/2. Well, 2 3/4. So that makes total sense why I couldn't get the pads to fit. So now I need to knock all these studs out to change the hat, or sorry, the spindle mount, the wheel mount, over to the new rotor. And the smart, fast, easy way to do this is with the hydraulic press and just pop them out, pop the new ones in. I don't have a press. This is what I'm going to use. Just a 3/8 punch and a 3-pounder. Now, I did this yesterday, and Thumbelina had to suffer quite a bit. She got smashed 3 or 4 times. But it still moves, and the nail hasn't changed colors yet, so it still hurts, but, you know, it's all the nature of the beast. Now, I'm going to put you guys up on some time lapse, and I'll punch all these studs out. We'll come back and I'll clean the studs up a little bit, the splines on the shank. We'll throw them on the new rotor, and we'll go from there. Okay, now that this is out, just take some brake clean, clean up all the caca off of these studs. Also, to press these out, you could just take your hammer and smack right on the end of the stud. It works pretty well, but I have mushroomed the end of enough studs to know better than to do that bullshit. A lot of people have good luck with it. I am just not one of those people. So I'm going to stick to the method I use. Yeah, it takes a little longer, but I get better results. I haven't mushroomed out a stud in, I don't know, 5 years since I started using a punch. Now, give a little shot in each of the holes just to make sure there's nothing in there. Just like that. Now, these studs actually have a nice little recess joint down in here. And you'll know when you bottom it out because the tone changes. I'll show you. Get all these started. And I'll do one just to show you the difference in the sound. Sorry in advance if you wear headphones for this video, because this part gets a little noisy. But we'll start here. Hear it? How it like stopped? It just sounds completely dead, right? It doesn't sound hollow anymore. That stud is now set. So I'm going to do the other 7, probably on a time lapse again, and then we'll be back in time to put this on. Time to put this thing back together. Hopefully for the last time. Hopefully. Whoops, don't do that. Okay, I realized after watching what I'd already recorded from yesterday, I didn't really explain very well how to put these things back together. So, set your first big washer in place, and your first lock ring or nut or whatever you want to call it. And when you tighten these up, so you tighten your first ring all the way up. Spin your stuff around a little bit. Go a little more. That's how I was taught to do it, and I haven't had one fail on me yet. See? Spins just fine. It's got plenty of resistance to hold the bearing in place, but it also spins freely enough that it's not going to hurt the bearings from overheating or whatever. You take your lock ring, just set it in place. Now see, the first person that taught me how to do this had the socket, and he went all the way down, like as tight as you can get it, and then he backed it off just a hair, and it worked great for him. But as I got older and I realized if you don't have the right tool, just snug it up, make sure it'll spin freely, and that's it. But you know, you'd have to keep adequate pressure on it. This is a pain. And this outside one, go as tight as you can get it. Until one of these teeth there we go. One of these teeth on this lock ring lines up with one of the cogs in your nut there. So this is tight by hand. So I'll take my screwdriver and I'll knock it around probably until that tooth right there lines up here. Then I'll take my screwdriver and knock it up into place so it keeps this nut from backing out. And then that's it. You just slide your axle back in, put your bolts back on, and you're done. Lines up perfect. Walk it up. And dishes are done, my guy. See how nice that locked up in there? Now this thing will not move until you take that out. Let's get an axle back in this thing. If your holes don't line up, just spin your hub a little bit. When I was a young mechanic, I used to panic, pull the axle back out, slide the splines over, thinking maybe I was in the wrong slot, you know. But I got wise as I got older and realized that this is the easier way, the smarter way. Usually what I'll do is I'll start 3 or 4 of them and push the axle all the way in. Because once you get 3 or 4 of them started, you know your seal's not going to move. None of that shit. You can just send them home. So now, take your 3/4 socket. And that one's done. Spins freely. It's an easy way to find out if you have an open diff or not too. which I do, and I do have 410s. Now we need to get the caliper, the pads and everything dropped in, but okay, well, as you can see, it cogs towards the outside of the vehicle. Like I told you guys before, take your caliper, load your pads into it. It just slides into place. Not supposed to drop your brake pads, by the way. Take your slides, make sure you put a little bit of grease on them. I use wheel bearing grease for mine, but you can use whatever type of grease you choose. I use the grease that you use to like hand pack bearings. Shit, you know, high temp wheel bearing grease. That's it. They just thread right into the brackets there. Holds everything in place. Taut. And I have super sockets that, you know, I could just use a ratchet for this, but these were closer and I was in a rush this morning, so that part's done. She spins, everything clears. Still need to figure out how to plumb this thing in, because that's going to be my emergency brake. And when I twin stick the 205, this will help me do unnecessary front digs. So I need to ditch my booster, because I'm going to just go master straight to firewall and change the ratio on the pedal. I'll just move the rod up a little bit, because that'll adjust the ratio. And as far as I've been able to find, I can do that and it should be fine. So I'll get rid of this, mount this straight to the firewall, install the proportioning valve, probably figure out how to plumb in the line lock before all this, or before this is all said and done. Build me a fancy little mount to come from here to hold my proportioning valve, and the rest of it is rock and roll, I guess. Now, see, they look nice down in there. And the tolerances are kind of tight, but I have my 42s are on 16-inch wheels, and this kit says you can run 16 or larger, so I should be fine. I'm going to go ahead and throw this tire on because these are done, and hopefully I'll be able to tackle the intake today. I have to take it off that motor I showed you guys yesterday. That's the only reason I bought that whole setup, was so I could have the intake off of it and the carburetor and all that fancy stuff. However, the rest of that motor and trans setup, I think, is going to end up going in that custom 300 I've been building, because that 292 is pretty tired. It's got a lot of blow-by in it, and like you can see it coming out of the vent tube on the oil filler, because, you know, that's the original motor out of that car. And I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of miles have been put on that car. It's been across the country most of my life, a couple of times a year, you know, when my aunt owned it. So that 302 should work just fine. It's going to have plenty of pep. That car's still drum brake. I don't want too much power. And the automatic transmission that's in the car, I can't find the pressure solenoid for, so I don't need one for the trans I just got with that 302. So I'm thinking the rest of that package is gonna go in that car. So that project, or that motor, I mean, is gonna help me with two projects, which was the whole goal. So hopefully today I can get this intake tackled and be one step closer to actually being able to start this pile of shit. So we're making progress. It's just very slow. But you know, if you've made it this far, I appreciate you. Thank you for your time. And remember, guys, your dreams aren't going to work unless you do.